Well, good afternoon and welcome to Live Impact News right here on 13 News Now Plus. 1 o'clock p.m. on the dot on February 17th, 2026. It is a Tuesday. We are early in the week, but a week where there's a little bit of warmth coming our way. It's already starting to warm up out there by my judgment as we speak right now. Evan Stewart will be with us later on to talk a little bit more in depth about the forecast. So we will have weather coming up in the show, but we actually begin today's edition of Live Impact News with sad breaking news coming out of America today, and that is the passing of Jesse Jackson, the civil rights leader, Baptist minister, and a politician who launched two separate bids for the presidency. Jesse Jackson, I've seen in many of the tributes him being described as a giant of the civil rights movement, a titan of the civil rights movement, one of the defining figures of the civil rights movement and the civil rights progress that has been made in the United States. He passed away this morning at the age of 84. He is survived by his wife, Jacqueline Jackson. They were married in 1962, as well as 6 children. Now, he founded the civil rights organization Rainbow Push Coalition, and again, was involved in many different aspects of the civil rights movement, from being a minister, Reverend Jesse Jackson, as he was so often referred, a civil rights leader, and again, a politician with multiple campaigns for the presidency. Jesse Jackson, again, a towering figure in the civil rights movement, passed away at the age of 84 this morning. So we're going to start things out with a tribute story to Reverend Jackson right now.
This morning, the world mourning the loss of a civil rights giant.
Our flag is red, white, and blue, but our nation is rainbow. Red, yellow, brown, black, and white. We're all precious in God's sight.
Reverend Jesse Jackson was one of the most prominent politicians in the 80s and 90s, blazing the trail for generations to follow. All of his life, the Reverend Jesse Jackson preaching, exhorting, demanding justice in a quest to help his people and nation overcome.
We ain't the bottom, we the foundation.
Always marching, civil rights nonviolent soldier. There he was, shoulder to shoulder with Martin Luther King Jr. after witnessing the beatings of Bloody Sunday on television. Jackson eventually became one of the top lieutenants in the critical Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which challenged the Jim Crow South's withering oppression. A witness to history, he was there on that fateful April evening when King was struck down by an assassin's bullet.
And I tried to feel his head, and I asked him, I said, Dr. King, do you hear me? Dr. King, do you hear me? And he didn't say anything.
After a leadership struggle with King's successor, Reverend Ralph Abernathy, Jackson split from the SCLC and formed a new organization, People United to Save Humanity, PUSH.
Black, beautiful.
After Dr. King, I don't think anyone captured the spirit of America like Reverend Jackson, and he took the movement north. I think Jesse Jackson was the link from that generation of King and them all the way to my generation, and then the generation behind me.
The first wave of the civil rights movement had succeeded in breaking down significant barriers, but Jackson's primary focus was on economic empowerment.
We know that we are worthy of respect and protection, but nobody really knows our name, and so we're really still struggling.
He broke boundaries in politics, twice running for president, first in 1984 under the banner of a Rainbow Coalition. In 1988, he was for a time the Democratic Party's frontrunner for the presidential nomination, before eventually losing the nomination to Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis.
I'd rather go down in the stirring fight than drowse to death at the sheltered shore.
Jackson also took on the role of freelance international negotiator, meeting with some of the world's most brutal tyrants.
Overseas, the American black activist Jesse Jackson has become an intermediary in the Middle East.
In 1984, he met with Syria's Hafez al-Assad,
Goodman and the Reverend Jackson arrived at Andrews Air Force Base,
securing the release of downed American naval officer Lieutenant Robert Goodman. In 1990, he held talks with Saddam Hussein, to free foreign nationals being held in Iraq as human shields. And in 1999, he went behind enemy lines again to meet with Slobodan Milosevic to negotiate the return of 3 American prisoners of war. At times, he was a spiritual advisor, counseling President Clinton in his darkest hour, facing impeachment over a sex scandal. But Jackson had his own moments where he fell far short of what he had championed. In the mid-1980s, facing controversy for allegedly making a highly offensive remark about the Jewish community.
God is not finished with me yet.
And as an ordained minister, having to admit in 2001 he had fathered a child after an affair with a former staffer. Although somewhat diminished, Jackson leaned in on his faith of forgiveness and redemption and kept fighting, keeping his eyes on the prize. He saw one of his hopes realized on election night in 2008 in Chicago's Grant Park.
America, I have never been more hopeful than I am tonight that we will get there.
He wept as President-elect Barack Obama delivered his victory speech. In recent years, the effects of age and a long illness had slowed his gait, but not his spirit. Jackson going public with his private health battle, dealing with a myriad of health issues. He was hospitalized in Chicago in mid-November and released a few weeks later. Through it all, Jackson's faith and hope in what America could be endured. Jackson's family saying he passed away peacefully in his sleep. He was 84 years old.
America will get better and better. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. I love you very much. I love you very much.
And what a life, what a legacy for Jesse Jackson. An incredible story. You cannot tell the history of the United States of America without Jesse Jackson and his influence and his impact. And you even see in that particular story meeting with world leaders from around the globe at times during his leadership. Just an incredible, incredible path that Reverend Jackson walked. And we saw some of the other famous names that were included in that story, some of those names with tributes pouring in today, including Barack Obama, who said, "Michelle and I are deeply saddened to hear about the passing of a true giant, the Reverend Jesse Jackson. We will always be grateful for Jesse's lifetime of service and the friendship our families share. We stood on his shoulders. We send our deepest condolences to the Jackson family and everyone in Chicago and beyond who knew and loved him." A lengthier statement included in that post if you want to go look it up on your own with more from former President Barack Obama. And again, there's that word again, giant, a giant of the civil rights movement. About Kamala Harris, Reverend Jesse Jackson was one of America's greatest patriots. He spent his life summoning all of us to fulfill the promise of America and building the coalitions to make that promise real. And then, of course, she talks quite a bit about his life and accomplishments as well. And then locally here, others getting in on those tributes. Luis Lucas, in 1984, Jesse Jackson was running for president and wanted to come to Portsmouth to do a parade. His campaign kept running into roadblocks. He got involved personally and asked to be sent to, quote, the person who could get things done. That's how we met and became friends. And I believe if you scroll down here just a little bit, Sarah, that continues. I was just a newly elected city councilwoman at the time for Luis Lucas, but we got the parade booked and it went off without a hitch. I was proud to support both of his historic campaigns for president and opened the door to do so for many others who came behind him. Rest in peace, Reverend Jesse Jackson. You made a difference and made all of us proud. So, national and local politicians with tributes pouring in for Reverend Jesse Jackson. Now, our coverage of the passing of this civil rights icon will continue later on in Live Impact News. We actually plan to hear from Al Sharpton. We recorded a press conference, a tribute that he gave earlier today. We're hoping to play that for you as we move forward with our stream here. But for now, we are actually going to pivot to weather for the time being because meteorologist Evan Stewart is here with us in studio with the forecast and a beautiful image of the Virginia Beach oceanfront next to us. Evan, welcome to the studio. And how was your day off on Monday?
It was very nice. Very nice President's Day. Washington's birthday, I guess, is the official government title of the day. And
a very well-deserved day off for you. You've been going pretty hard here through January and February because it has been cold. We've seen wintry mix. We've seen snowfall, all sorts of things. Ice, frigid,
wind,
freezing temperatures.
The images from the Outer Banks, that blizzard down there
Right.
that they had, just incredible video. Nothing like that in the forecast.
See, we embark on some pleasantry here.
Yeah, we are looking at sunshine. It's a little bit of a slow start getting those temperatures to climb this afternoon, but we are looking at some warmer days ahead, and eventually we are looking at some wetter weather moving in as well. As we take a look at the satellite and radar, we had a lot of that fog around this morning. Took quite a while for that fog to burn off as well, but you can see there on the visible satellite that it is finally starting to burn off here across the air, and we're seeing increasing sunshine. You can really see it when the sun comes up. So you see that fog and slowly starting to burn away. Still some fog up along areas of the eastern shore. And we'll look for temperatures to climb into the upper 50s and near 60 degrees this afternoon with a mix of clouds and sunshine. Again, might be a little bit cooler right near the coastline. And then later tonight, we're looking at partly cloudy skies only down into the 40s. So that's sort of a warm start to the day tomorrow. And as we get into the afternoon, temperatures climbing back up into the 60s. So we are looking at a warmer day into Wednesday. I wouldn't be surprised if some of those banking car thermometers hit 70 degrees tomorrow.
Wow. Okay, so we do plan on touching that 70-degree mark here in mid-February.
We're going to be flirting with it. Yeah.
We're going to be flirting with it. And again, we cannot overstate this. This comes on the heels of not long ago where we had 4, 5, 6 straight days of freezing or below freezing temperatures. You turn around and we might hit 70 degrees here.
That's right, and that's sort of just the whole balance of the weather across the country. Now the West Coast is dealing with some more of the colder weather, so it's kind of, that reverse. If the east is warm, the cold is west, and vice versa. So now as we get beyond Wednesday, we are looking at some showers moving in. Wednesday night, that's a little bit of a front that is going to stall off towards our south, so it's not going to rain everywhere Wednesday into Thursday, but there will be some showers scattered around. And with the cloud cover, temperatures down a little bit. This takes us into Thursday afternoon. Notice 40s, 50s, 60s, and almost near 70 across the map. It's really where that front stalls out, but some much needed rain. Again, we were working on that rainfall deficit for the year. We were talking earlier about the drought situation across Hampton Road. So we are, still dealing with a drought here through eastern Virginia and North Carolina. We just got the last drought monitor. It came in last Thursday, so it does not include, that weekend rain that we saw. But we are dealing with a moderate drought right now. And, of course, the rainfall that we got will certainly help that situation as we go here over the next several days.
Okay, so quite a few updates coming in there. Not just the warm weather, but that wet weather that not only the wet weather is what brings the warm weather, or they come hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
These are not two separate phenomenons. One would not exist without the other here during this particular stretch.
Right, in this case, and a lot of times in the, in the winter and the spring and the fall, you get the warm weather, but to get the warm weather, you also get some of that rain moving in. And you can see here that, Wednesday evening, some showers, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, chance for those showers. And then as the system exits, of course, that's when those temperatures drop again back into the 40s for Sunday and Monday.
Okay, so a little bit of rain coming with those warm weekend temperatures. So perhaps a Wednesday evening out for anyone who wants to enjoy the warm weather when it's a little bit more dry is the move.
Yeah, later into the evening, there'll be some showers, but, during the afternoon and early evening should be fine.
Yeah, very good. All right, so those drop. Go ahead, Sarah.
And I just wanted to say, I know you mentioned the fog earlier, and I took a time lapse earlier of the fog, and it looks so different this morning compared to what we're currently seeing. Oh, and it just decided to.
I can vouch for Sarah that it was indeed pulled up. Okay, there we go.
So this was this morning at the oceanfront, and now on the right is what we're seeing right now, which looks a lot better.
That is real. I mean, that was consistent for some time there. You cannot even see past that second hotel. And then, of course, you go to this afternoon's image, and we see boats floating along the horizon over there. So that fog dissipating just in time for a beautiful afternoon here.
Yeah, we still have a little bit of fog up along the eastern shore right now. Visibility's at Melfa, 10 miles. but it looks like there still might be a little bit of fog up towards Chincoteague area.
Okay, so still a little bit of fog out there. But for the most part, on most of our cams here in Hampton Roads, we're seeing mostly clear skies, mostly blue skies, very few clouds, which if you had asked me, I would have said that maybe fog and clouds are sort of in concert with each other, but I suppose that's not always the case. You can have a very foggy day and then clear blue skies once that kind of dissipates.
Yeah, just above it, you could have clear skies. So yeah, and fog is just a cloud that's at the ground.
Right. I would have thought they'd have some friends that are still up in the sky, even though they've matriculated down to the ground, but not necessarily the case. What else is important for us to know here for the rest of this week? I mean, we've got that rain covered. What else?
Yeah, that's really it. We've got the colder temperatures that'll be coming back. It looks like into next week, Sunday and Monday, we're looking at highs back in the 40s. But, next couple of days, a little bit warmer. It's still chilly out there. We're still in the 50s. Let's see what the current temperatures are out there right now. Because it was, and it was a little bit breezy when I was out this morning.
Yep, a little bit. I thought I was going to be able. I arrived here at the station kind of early afternoon. I thought I was going to be able to get out without a jacket on, but I did have to throw the jacket on. I got a little eager about that 60-degree weather that was coming. It wasn't here quite yet.
Yeah, I mean, we're still at 51 in Norfolk with us. We got the southwest wind coming in 15 miles per hour, so that is going to be pushing those temperatures up. But you can see we're still sitting in the 50s in most spots, even some 40s down towards Elizabeth City and along the Outer Banks and up along the eastern shore, Wallops Island right now. 41 cloudy, 86% humidity. Southerly winds are coming in, hopefully alleviating some of the fog issues up there.
And meteorological spring coming on March 1st, correct? Oh, that's our studio phone that just went off there. Nobody ever calls that phone. That's okay. That's a little harrowing there. I've actually never seen a call come into that phone. Usually that's for us to just send messages out.
But yes, meteorological spring starts on March 1st.
And it starts March 1st no matter what, correct?
Yes.
Now, what are the signs that you look for that let you know, okay, springtime is here, that maybe we wouldn't be able to see looking out our window?
There's nothing special, you know. I mean, I'm looking at, the long-term models and seeing, how they're, sort of trending in the extended forecast. But, we're looking at the same things you are, seeing, how the squirrels are behaving and, when we see that first robin and that sort of stuff.
First robin, that's a Virginia thing? If we see our first robin, that's how we know the springtime is en route?
Yeah, I don't think it's just a Virginia thing. I think a lot of places, that they use the robin as sort of the sign of spring.
Now, this is actually a first for me. Having lived here my whole life, this is the first I've heard of the robin theory. I'm going to need to be a little more aware. I'm going to look for a robin to let me know that the warm temps are here.
Yeah, you're going to have to do some investigating.
Do some bird watching.
Yeah.
Break out the binoculars, get real serene with it. Okay, so more good news and our drought conditions being alleviated a little bit by some of this rain that's incoming. All good things from our weather team this week.
And it was interesting, talking about the robins and stuff. I was just reading online that, somebody was asking, well, how do the birds stay warm in the winter?
They migrate.
Well, not all birds.
No.
No, I mean, there are a lot of Canada geese around.
Okay.
And I saw a blue jay yesterday. So, there are birds out there.
Yeah.
And, their down feathers, those are the ones closest to their bodies, they get thicker feathers in the wintertime, and that's how they stay warm.
They grow a thicker layer there.
Yeah, undercoat of feathers, yeah.
Okay, so it's their own version of putting on a jacket.
It basically,
but it just sprouts from their own bodies.
Yes.
Now, if you could, as a person, have that power, would you take it?
Absolutely.
So January, February comes, and you just sort of grow your own coat. You're okay with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
All right, but then, the problem is we go inside. The birds don't go inside.
They don't. No.
We'd have to figure out we'd have to pump the AC in here a little bit.
Yeah.
We have to get something going. Now, it sounds like that is all that we need to know in terms of the weather this week.
That's all you need to know.
All right. I know you got a lot coming up today. We'll see you at 4 o'clock on 13 News Now.
And at 6:30.
And then you and I will be on that 6:30 show, the hottest broadcast in local news. 13 News Now Plus, 6:30 p.m. Check us out, myself and Evan, all week, bringing you a little bit of news before we take a break before that 11 o'clock show. All right. Evan Stewart, you're the best. We appreciate your time. And we're actually going to take a quick break here on Live Impact. When we come back, We have some live events that we want to take a look at just after this. Welcome back to Live Impact News here on this Tuesday afternoon. Great news coming from the weather team. We love to see that. Now, we only have one live event going on for the time being, but it is one that we want to visit with for a little bit. We talked about this yesterday. We plan on having this be something we cover for at least the next couple of weeks. Experts have maybe pinpointed about 3 weeks for how long the Colin Gray trial may last. Some brief background. I know we've been over this, but you may remember a 2024 shooting at a Georgia high school that killed 4 people, 2 students and 2 teachers, and injured a number of others. That shooting allegedly carried out by Colin Gray, a student at that high school. On trial today, on trial this week, is Colin Gray. That's Colin Gray's father. On trial for nearly 30 charges, all of which he has pled not guilty to. Included in those charges, second-degree murder and involuntary manslaughter after, again, his son alleged to have carried out the mass shooting at a Georgia high school in 2024. So another sort of new frontier, if you will, a new aspect of mass shootings as this story continues to develop, a new level of consequence that may come to those connected to alleged shooters in situations like this. It all makes this trial one to pay attention to, not to speak of the tragic consequences that befell that high school and the friends and family of all of those who were killed or injured in that incident, who are hoping for and looking for justice when it comes to that situation. So let's go live out to Georgia now and listen in on the Colin Gray trial.
I went mom, but then I just did it. I don't know why.
Okay. When you were sitting there kind of with all the girls over in the corner, do you know how long y'all were there waiting on police?
No, but it felt quick for me.
Okay. When y'all were there, did you know whether or not the shooter had been taken into custody?
I didn't know.
Okay. Were y'all afraid that he was going to come back?
Yeah.
Okay. Had anyone tried to barricade the door to prevent that from happening?
I think it was Coach Edwards.
Okay. When police got there, tell me what happened.
Well, they told us to put our hands up, so we all did. I was trying to walk out, and then Martin, he was comforting me, saying it was okay, and that I could do it, and he was just comforting me to tell me not to look down, because there was blood everywhere on the after I left the classroom, we went up a hill, like near the football field.
Okay. And what were y'all doing in the football field?
It was just a bunch of students and classes, like all together. And I saw my friends, so I was just like with them. And then we started moving to the bleachers.
Okay. Is that where parents ultimately came to meet y'all?
Yeah.
Okay. And were you able to find your parents or a family member?
Yes.
Okay. When kind of since this day, can you tell us how that shooting has affected you?
I get scared very easily now, and when I'm in public, if I hear a loud noise, sometimes I get scared.
When did you go back to school after this?
The first day they said we could go back.
Was it difficult going back?
A little bit.
Does anything kind of trigger you being afraid?
Yes.
Okay, and can you tell us what that is?
Oh, guns, loud noises, and sometimes being near a door.
All right. Thank you, Brittany. I don't have any further questions for you, and I don't think the defense has any.
Jimmy Cross. No, no question. All right. Thank you. Coach, could you bring Michaela Brown next? State calls Michaela Brown, right? Hey, Michaela.
Hey.
Could you raise your right hand, please? Swear the testimony you'll give, the matter now pending before this court, will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you. Put your hand down. If you could, I'm going to need you to speak up so everyone can hear you, okay? And you can use that microphone. Could you please introduce us and tell us what your name is?
My name is Michaela Brown.
Okay. Can you spell your first name for the court reporter?
M-A-K-A-Y-L-A-H.
Okay. And Michaela, where do you go to school?
I go to Appalachian High School.
And how old are you?
I'm 16 years old.
And when is your birthday?
September 19.
Okay. Last year, did you also go to Appalachia? Last year, school year, did you also go to Appalachia?
Yes, sir, I did.
And were you a freshman that year?
Yes, sir.
For second period, what class did you have?
I had Miss Ryan's class.
Okay. And on September 4th, were you in class that day?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We're going to pull up a seating chart. That's not it there. Well, that's the seating chart. We're going to pull a different one up that has where we think you were sitting. And tell us if that's correct.
Sorry. I was sitting right there.
Was that a new place to sit that day?
Yeah, my teacher just switched the seating chart.
She switched you. What were y'all doing in class that day?
I think that's the day when she switched the seating chart. I don't remember.
Okay. How does class normally go as far as the teaching?
Can you repeat that?
How does class normally go as far as the teaching?
Just go as a normal day.
Okay. Do you work individually? Do you work in groups? Does the teacher just kind of teach you and you listen, or how does it work with Miss Ryan's class?
So sometimes she teaches and we listen, or sometimes we work in groups.
Okay. Do you remember that morning if she was actually teaching you, or were you working in groups that morning?
She was teaching us.
Okay. Is at some point during this class did something catch your attention that wasn't right?
No, sir.
Okay. When did you first notice something happening?
When he was just standing at the door.
Okay. So you're according to that seat, the door's kind of behind you, right?
Yes, sir.
Did you turn and look at the door?
Yes, sir.
What was it that made you turn and look at the door?
I just heard a big loud banging noise against
you turned around and looked at the door, what did you see?
I see him standing there with the gun.
Okay. This person you saw standing there, had you ever seen them before?
No, sir.
Okay. And what were they doing with the gun?
He was holding it at first, and then I think he took the safety off.
Okay. After he took the safety off, what did he do?
He started shooting around
Okay.
the classroom.
Did he ever come into the classroom, or did he just stay there at the door?
He was just standing there at the door.
Okay. And how many times did he shoot the gun into the room?
About like 15, 10, can't remember.
Okay. What was it like when he first started shooting?
I don't really remember. All I remember is him aiming it at me and I dropped down.
Okay.
That's it.
Were you able to hear anything?
I wasn't really focused on that. I was just focused on me trying to.
Being on the ground?
Yeah.
Okay. So how long do you think it took for those 15 or so shots before he stopped shooting? How long was it when you hit the ground to when he stopped shooting?
Like 10 seconds.
Okay. When the shots stopped, what did you do?
I got up, looked around,
Okay.
and then I just remember just to go get my phone and call my mom.
Okay. When you got up and looked around, was the shooter still in the room?
No, sir.
Okay.
The door was blocked.
The door was shut, blocked. Okay. Who was blocking the door?
I think Coach Edward, I remember, and one student, I can't remember who it was.
And what were they doing to block the door?
They was using this. I wasn't really paying attention to that.
I understand. What were you doing at that point?
I ran to the other side to go grab my phone.
Okay. Where on that was your phone on that little diagram?
Under Miss Ryan's desk.
Okay, and hers is the one on the top right corner?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you went and got your phone. Did you stay up there to call your mom, or did you run somewhere else with your phone?
I stayed under the desk.
Stayed under the desk. Were you able to reach your mom?
Yes.
Okay. What did you tell your mom?
Well, I told my mom that my school got shot up.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think that's all I remember. I told her.
Did you stay on the phone with your mom, or did you hang up?
I was still on the phone with my mom.
Okay.
But like I was not paying attention to her.
Okay. While you were there, how long before the police came to your room?
It took about like 5 minutes.
Okay. During that 5 minutes, what was happening inside the room? What were other people doing?
All I heard was screaming. I was just under there, so I can't really see. And I was helping my friend Taylor too, as well.
Okay. And what was wrong with Taylor?
She was on the ground, looked like she was passing out.
Okay. Could you see if there was any blood around her?
No, sir. All I remember her was her leg. That's all she said, and then her grab her phone.
Okay. And you said she was passing out?
Yeah.
Did she pass out?
No, I can't really tell, but all I saw was her lip going white.
Okay. And was she able to move around any?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you stay there with her?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Were you still with her when police came?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When the police got there, how did they get in the door?
They moved the desk out the way, like they was just shoving themselves in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think Coach Edward was helping them too. I can't remember.
Okay. About how many police came in?
Like 2, 3, I can't remember how many.
And what were they doing when they came in?
They was grabbing all the injured people first, and then they told us to, like, let's go out the door. And then I was holding my friend Hayden's down, her eyes, like, so she wouldn't see.
Okay. When
All right, back in here at Live Impact News, as you can see, what appears to be a student at the time of the shooting having to recount that day on the stand. Certainly difficult to listen to. Can't imagine how difficult that is to actually do, sitting up there on the witness stand. But bravery, courage from that student as they continue to go through the legal process there in that trial. It's something that, again, we are going to continue to cover. We anticipate it stretching well beyond this week when it comes to that trial. Okay, a piece of breaking news very briefly here for you. Getting reports from WUSA, one of our sister stations in Washington, D.C., that a person was arrested for allegedly carrying a gun near the U.S. Capitol on Tuesday. Today, of course, according to Capitol Police, officers responded to a, quote, security concern on the lower west terrace of the U.S. Capitol shortly after noon, so maybe a little more than an hour ago. And there you see live footage there. That, of course, is the Capitol building up at the top portion of your screen. And at the bottom is live footage of what appears to be the scene of maybe where that person was detained. Staff and other personnel directed to avoid this area until further notice, according to Capitol Police. Now, what else do we know about this? Around 12:30, Capitol Police over on X announced that the officer had spotted a person with what appeared to be a gun near the west front of the Capitol building. Maryland Avenue temporarily closed over there. Some of the other streets around that area, portions closed off while crews investigate, but Capitol Police says there does not appear to be any other suspects or ongoing threat. But nonetheless, a live scene still present there in Washington, D.C. today. Now, we are going to take a quick break here. We're going to go to commercial, and then we're going to be joined in studio by none other than Janet Roach. Yes, she has some time in between creating documentaries, anchoring all of our shows, covering daily stories, to come and sit with us here in the Live Impact News studio. We're going to talk a little bit about the life and legacy of Reverend Jesse Jackson. First, a brief commercial break. Welcome back in the studio for Live Impact News. We appreciate you staying with us, and we, of course, are joined, as we promised, by Janet Roach. Janet, welcome back from a little vacation.
A little vacation, yeah.
How are you doing today? How's
I'm doing
everything?
Well. Yeah, trying to get back into the swing of things.
That's right, easing back into the day. Hopefully we provide you a nice little on-ramp here on Live Impact News to kind of get reacquainted.
Keep the speed a little low. I don't want to
we
go
will.
too fast.
Low frequency today. And it is, it's unfortunate we bring you in here on a sad day.
Yeah.
The passing of Reverend Jesse Jackson, 84 years old. And I would be happy for you to just take this wherever you want. What is the enduring memory of Jesse Jackson for you, whether that's as a public figure or as someone who you crossed paths with?
Well, I mean, definitely as a powerful public figure. And I was speaking before that, once upon a time, I've been doing this for sometime, working as a reporter. And so there used to be a lot of events where civil rights leaders, educational leaders in the Black community, financial, economic leaders would come together and do a lot of visits in towns and cities across the country, just to talk to people, to encourage, minority communities. So in the beginning of my reporting career, it was not unusual, to be sitting in the newsroom and, a news director would say, well, hey, today the Reverend Jesse Jackson is in town for XYZ, and we're going to go cover it. And so over the years, I guess I've interviewed him, I'm going to say, I think about 4 different times.
Wow.
And I think the first time was in South Carolina. My first job in TV was in South Carolina, and Florence, Myrtle Beach market. And so I remember interviewing him there. And the funny story is, and I mentioned this, is that we were at a dinner, and this was after everything was over, and someone said, hey, eat with us. And I was like, okay. I'm a young reporter, and I said, okay. And I'm sitting there, and I'm around these prominent people, and I'm trying to, be
like proper.
And
right.
so I take my knife and fork, and they're barbecue ribs.
Yeah.
And he looked down at me. He was a few seats away, and he was like, girl, what are you doing? Let me come over there and show you how to eat these ribs. Like, put that knife and fork down and grab that stuff by your fingers. And so I remember that was a funny moment, but a very charismatic leader that, leaves a huge impact on, not just the Black community, but the country as a whole. Yeah. He founded the Rainbow Push Coalition back in the 90s, which came from Operation Push, which he founded. And this is a nonprofit organization that worked to improve the lives of African Americans, whether it was in voting rights or economic, hardships or educational opportunities. He would even create these educational centers in various cities to help kids improve their academics. And voting rights was definitely huge, very huge. This was based in Chicago. He was born actually in South Carolina. He is a South Carolina native.
Okay.
And went to school at A&T State University in North Carolina. And so the university is remembering him fondly today as well. They have put out several statements about the impact that he had on education and on the university. And so, I can remember, I was really young, but I remember him running for president in 1984 and in 1988. And really, particularly the second time he ran, making a very strong showing. I believe he won 11 of the primaries.
And we played a package to start off our show today, and it said that for a time he was the leading Democratic candidate in that election. I mean, he and Dukakis eventually went on to get the nomination, but for a time Jackson was the leading candidate, which is remarkable.
Which is remarkable for back then, and it showed that a Black candidate could certainly make a strong showing, and that could one day, as we certainly saw, could win the presidency. And everybody talks about that shot of Jesse Jackson in the audience when Barack Obama came out on the stage, and the tears just flowed down Jesse Jackson's
He's kind of
face.
holding his mouth almost, attempting to maintain some composure, but the moment clearly, overwhelming for him, and I can't even imagine what that would be
very
like.
much so.
It
Wow.
is. I was telling them to me is the defining image of that election for me. It's just not even in a intellectual sense. It's just the thing that I remember is seeing him in the crowd crying. Because for me, it was early on in me actually paying attention to those sorts of things.
Exactly. I remember that. I remember it very, very well.
Right.
And it was kind of, I guess, a full circle moment, because you thought about everything that he had fought so hard for, and being a lieutenant of Martin Luther King Jr. and coming out of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and actually the organizations that he founded. they found it based on the principles of the SCLC that was founded by Martin Luther King Jr.
And we talked about how in that story, how they said that he was actually present when Martin Luther King was killed.
Yes.
And so to see that happen to someone who you ostensibly look up to and who you follow and who you are walking in the same footsteps as, to see that happen and to be undeterred in your desire to continue on in that fight, I think speaks to the courage, the resiliency, the moral principle, because to see that happen to someone who you admire and then not think, well, maybe I should step back from this too because I'm obviously at risk if he was, but instead to say, we need to push harder.
It did the opposite.
Right.
It is what propelled him to set on the path that he did. I think it made him believe that this is definitely something that has to be continued. And he really hit the ground running with Operation Push and then the Rainbow Push Coalition and everything that he did, not just in Chicago, but across the country. And so that's why I ran into him. And I used to joke, I used to say, every reporter at one time has interviewed, the Reverend Jesse Jackson because he made his presence known. He had something to say. He stood for something. He stood for something valuable, and he did not hesitate to go around the country and let people know this is what I stand for and this is what I'm fighting for.
And to take that fork in the road, I think it speaks to his courage, to his bravery, and to his character to go and do that. And then you segued into, every reporter has interviewed Jesse Jackson at some point in time. You and I have had conversations in the past about modern media and the differences in access that maybe exist nowadays. And this particular event made me think about that a little bit because of how accessible he was and how no matter where he was, local reporters all the way up to the biggest shows on television, he was able to and willing to talk and to explain and to engage. And I wonder if you think that that's lacking now to some degree.
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah. And social media, modern technology has a lot to do with that because we used to, and I'm not that old, but we used to interview, a lot of the movers and shakers, celebrities all the time. They made themselves accessible to local TV news. Well, see, now you have TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and as soon as you want to say something, you just put out your own video.
Right.
So you didn't feel, so you no longer feel obligated to go to a number of different sources to get the word out that whatever you want to convey. But it didn't used to be that way. So you would have events, and I can remember an event years ago where a number of civil rights leaders and people like John Lewis, Julian Bond, Andrew Young, Ron Brown. These are all people, Dick Gregory, that I've had an opportunity to interview over the course of my career, and even people like Colin Powell and Desmond Tutu. But it's not quite the same now. The accessibility isn't always there, but you can always push for it.
You can always push for it, and we do always push for it. And you talk about social media and the ability to speak directly to your fans or your audience is something that has a lot of value. But it also means that those messages can be carefully curated and controlled.
Right.
And when you take out the aspect of a conversation with a journalist who is covering you in an unbiased way, there is growth and valuable information that comes out of those conversations that you likely won't get from a curated, controlled social media post where the goal is to avoid any level of risk whatsoever.
Right.
Whereas, someone like Jesse Jackson, you admire the confidence that he had in his message to say, well, I'll do an interview with anyone about this.
Yeah.
And part of that probably comes from the fact that he knew that he felt so strongly in his message that he didn't need to, avoid difficult questions.
Oh, no. He would answer anything. You could throw any question at Jesse Jackson. Very charismatic, very confident, and very much aware of what he wanted to say and the messages that he wanted to convey. Yeah. One of the times I did meet up with him was in Chicago. So when I left here, I was here as a young reporter. in South Carolina, then here. Then I left, and I was a reporter in Milwaukee and an anchor in Milwaukee and D.C. and Baltimore. But I used to freelance for Black Entertainment Television. I would report. And so I remember I would cover stories in the Chicago area because it was so close to Milwaukee. And he was based in Chicago. So I went there to the Rainbow Push headquarters and got a chance to see him there. And there was an event going on with Louis Farrakhan that I covered for Black Entertainment Television. And so I just remember being at the headquarters and just seeing all these people, just all working, for the same common cause.
And when South Carolina, that first interview, by then you likely had a comfort level, a little more experience. You knew how to eat ribs. We go back to South Carolina. Do you remember were you nervous?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I was nervous. I was 21. A few years ago, and I was nervous, and still everything was for the first time. Right. You know how that is when you're first starting off. Your first interview, your first live shot, your first, big time interview.
It all feels so big.
It all feels so big, and am I saying the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? No, I'm not eating those ribs right, and he called me out. But
and that speaks to he can go in front of an audience of however many thousand people and express a message, but then he can also have that one-to-one relatability and, like you said, the ability to sit down at the dinner table and engage also on a human level and on a personal level, and that's a gift. I mean, that really is a very unique gift.
Oh yeah.
We talk about his legacy, and how President Obama is a part of that, and he had that same gift where he could command a room of 50,000, but then he could also, you see him on the campaign trail having a one-on-one conversation where it feels like he's totally engaged and locked in on that person.
Yeah.
And even going back to the city of Chicago, just the poetic coincidences of their two paths.
Yeah, both being from Chicago or in Chicago. Yeah, right. And both dynamic speakers. So he was a great speaker. He could stir a crowd. He could bring a crowd to their feet. Yeah. Because he just knew how to hit the right note. And those two famous quotes, keep hope alive, keep hope alive. And you hear that now. So if you're in passing somewhere, you hear somebody says, yeah, keep hope alive. That's what that comes from. That is from Jesse Jackson. Keep hope alive, and then the I am somebody. And that was so important to him because, as he fought for marginalized communities, as he fought for people who have been locked out of the mainstream in so many different areas, educationally, financially, it was about conveying a message that you are somebody. Even though some of the cards have been stacked against you, don't let that deter you. And so I am somebody. I am somebody. And I have heard people say, Jesse Jackson made me feel like I am somebody. Right. And that I matter.
And those two statements more as pertinent now as ever in many ways.
Oh, gosh, yes. Yeah. Keep hope alive.
That's right. And keep the legacy of Reverend Jesse Jackson alive as well. And we've seen the tributes come pouring in today. Is there anything else that you want to add?
No, I mean, that pretty much covers it. I just, when I heard the news this morning, I was very sad. And that the time is going to come for everyone, but in the back of your mind, you're thinking, I wish there was some way that people could live forever, but that's not going to happen. But I think at 84 years old, he made his mark on this world, because he had a global reach as well, and not just within the country. And so, what is it that they say? Job well done. Job well done. Rest in peace.
Job well done. Rest in peace. And that mark on the world certainly will live forever. So there is that piece. Job well done. Rest in peace. Awesome to have Janet Roach in, as always. Thank you, Janet. We'll see you 4 o'clock on 13 News Now.
I will be there.
All right. Very good. Janet Roach, always a treat, and with some really poignant words there on the passing of Reverend Jesse Jackson. Now, we've also told you that we will be hearing from Al Sharpton today on a pre-recorded press conference, a pre-recorded tribute, really, to Jesse Jackson. Now, I want to bring in my producer very briefly here for some sort of itinerary questions. Are we going to Al Sharpton now? I know we also have a special guest coming in around 2 o'clock.
I think we can break.
We can break.
Then come back.
Okay.
We'll regroup in the break.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Let's go to commercial. We'll be back. We'll figure out where we're going to go once we return. Well, welcome back to Live Impact News. Thank you for sticking with us for a extended break period there. We appreciate it. As you heard before the break, we had a few things to discuss to get our ducks in a row here, and part of that was bringing a very special guest into the studio. We'll see him on the occasional Tuesday here on Live Impact News. We see him every Tuesday on 13 News Now at 4. Tim Fitzwilliam from Fitzwilliam Financial. Welcome back. Is this a second home for you yet?
It's starting to become that, yes.
Okay. Now, when you walk in the front door here, are you just like, hey, I'm good, I know exactly where to go, or are you still get the escort?
I do get an escort.
Okay. Good.
Escort, so.
Yeah. We gotta make sure that
there's levels to this thing.
Just because we see you all the time, we still want to treat you with the appropriate amount of care here. Now, Tim Fitzwilliam has been answering all sorts of financial questions for us in 2026, including questions that you may have emailed in. Oftentimes those come at 4 p.m. So today we're going to kind of continue down that path, right? This first one, a little bit of a turn of phrase here. Something that you like to use is lose less in order to make more. Now, how do you sort of extrapolate on that?
Yeah, so I think that's the whole secret sauce to making money, really, is if you can try to have less volatility. So it comes down to this mathematical principle called the sequence of returns. And that just states that in a sequence of numbers, depending on where the volatility ends up, depends on how much you'll have at the end. It's really a unique phenomenon because let's say a husband and wife are both earning an average of, say, 8% over the course of 30 years. At the end of that 30 years, Connor, one of them could have a whole lot more than the other. So the idea is volatility matters. And so we try to target 25% to 50% less volatility than the market.
Okay, so that is your target. Volatility is what you're looking to. I guess when you frame it that way, how much of your policy do you base around that? Like how much of a factor is that? Do you almost look at that more than anything else when surveying the market?
That's a really good question. I'd say that's one of our core principles for sure. So much so that it dictates how active and tactical we are, because we focus on a daily upkeep and a weekly rebalance. So we're constantly looking at things to try to avoid volatility. And that's really important. And we'll see things like last year during the tariff tantrum, where there was this drop in the market, right? Our goal was to try to lose less then. When in 22, interest rates went up, bonds went down, our goal was to try to lose less there as well. And it's all about those snapshots in time. If you can do something different, if you can move a different way, then you can try to eliminate the volatility. And we believe if you can eliminate the volatility, you'll have more. It's really easy if you look at it like if you have $100,000, Connor, and you lose 50%, simple math, you have $50,000. But if you make back 50% on that 50,000, you're only at 75,000.
Right.
See, a lot of people get that confused. You're not yet back to 100,000. So that volatility really does matter. So if you can smooth that out, then you'll have a higher internal rate of returns.
Now, in terms of smoothing that out, we've talked about this, and this happens with most of the people that we're able to talk to who are experts in specific subjects. The most foolproof way for a consumer or a customer to make sure that they are being safe in their movements, whether it's financially, health-wise, whatever they may be, is to get in touch with experts. Find someone you trust. Take their advice. Allow them to guide you in that task. But if somebody was sitting at home and they said, look, I want to learn how to monitor these things, and I want to know how I can become more aware of potential volatility, what would you tell them to look out for? How would they do that?
I think anything's possible.
Yeah.
It's about how far do you want to take it.
Right.
I mean, it's buckle up. It's you're going to want to get charting services and news feeds of the market that you can trust on multiple different levels, and then you're going to want to get educated around how different things work, and it becomes an entire career. And so it's a question of, do you want to spend that much time out of your life trying to keep up?
And I know that the crowd that I'm referencing, certainly not, right? That's why they're able to work with experts who have dedicated their lives to that specific task. What kind of piqued my interest, though, is you mentioned the tariff tantrum.
Sure.
That, to me, seems like something where any person who is staying in touch with the news can see this tariff tantrum coming and maybe say, that's going to be volatile. Is that reasonable for people to be able to pick out?
I think
those?
it is reasonable. Where
Right.
it becomes difficult and not reasonable is to find out what are the exact movements, stocks or mutual funds or ETFs that you need to buy or sell, and what type.
Right.
That's the secret sauce. So logically up here, it makes sense, right? Okay, tariff tantrum, then I'm going to look at this, right? And in fact, when the NVIDIA drama was happening because a tweet went out saying that things could be more effective, NVIDIA dropped so people could do things around that. But it's about, do you know exactly which levers to pull? And that's where the training and the expertise comes in. And you mentioned finding an expert. I 100% agree with you. I take it one step further. Right. Is also the fiduciary capacity. You want to work with someone that's going to put your interests ahead of their own.
Yeah, and we talk about, almost making your financial portfolio as successful as possible, driving that spaceship. Maybe you can see that, hey, there's a meteor we need to avoid, but to have the person who's actually able to steer the ship maybe is a little bit of what you need to fully execute that vision and that plan. That makes perfect sense. I completely understand that. Now, how much of someone's success depends on market returns versus savings rate? How critical is that comparison?
That's a great question. And I look at it, it's three different things that are needed in order to be successful in the market. You need to have capital to invest. So there's our savings. We need to have time, and we need market returns. And what you'll find is uniquely interesting is that if you're short on one of those, you need to be heavier on the other two, which is also a great opportunity for younger folks because they have the time and they can start a good savings model. So then they may not need to leverage themselves as much or to take on as much risk. Because the name of the game is to take on as little risk as possible to get to your goals. You don't want to take excess risk. But it's those three things.
Yeah.
You need the capital, you need time, and you need market returns.
And it's something you and I actually have discussed in the past on this platform, but I want to hone in on time. When you say time, how much time and why is that so important?
Well, that's a great question, too, is as much time as you can possibly get.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's limited by a lot of people's means. So you do what you can. And then you start to try to figure out what is a rational rate of return for my risk tolerance. And that's when you really get into how much risk am I comfortable with taking over what period of time to achieve the goal that I want to achieve.
And so the more time you have, the more likely it is that you are going to get the positive returns that you are looking for.
More likely, yes.
And at a lower risk sort of approach.
Because you have more time and you've had longer time to save as well, because that's a huge component.
And having all three, that's ideal. But you said
That'd be perfect,
if you have two of the three, you can make it work if things break
because
for you.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that is capital, time, market returns. That's your holy trinity right there of making it work. Now, when it comes to trimming winners versus letting them run, can you kind of explain that principle?
Sure.
What do you mean by that, and how do you kind of monitor which one to choose at
Absolutely.
any given time?
So we take that very serious. At Fitzwilliam Financial, we focus on a daily account viewing. So every day we're looking at something. So if something happens today in the news, we will make a move today. But we also focus on a weekly rebalancing. And so that's what we're talking about, trimming, right? So when you take a risk tolerance, say you're a 60-40 person, you're 60% stocks and 40% bonds as your risk tolerance, and something goes off really well. It does really well. And that shifts your risk tolerance, right? Because it did really well. Now you're maybe not 60-40 anymore. You might be 65, it might have changed a little bit, right? And so then you sell to trim that back down to your risk tolerance that you're supposed to be at. That's called rebalancing.
Right.
And we do that on a weekly basis because we believe it's that important. Going along that whole theme of what? Lose less to make more.
Yeah.
The more you can rebalance, the faster you are at making moves to be in and out of positions with a plan, mind you.
Right.
The better you're going to be. And I say with the plan because people buy thinking about the logic, but they also don't come up with a sell plan. We believe that when you buy something, you should make a sell plan at the exact same time. That way you're prepared no matter what happens.
Yeah. And do you find that once things maybe start going well, do people have difficulty sticking to that sell plan because they think, well, let's just keep this
Absolutely.
going? Yeah.
That's a big issue. People get emotionally connected, and stocks don't care about you, right? There are people say that they get emotionally connected because maybe their husband had that particular stock for so long or what have you, and there's no emotion in this. It's all business, and we have to look at it that way.
Right.
And so it's very important that we trim things down so that we can move on without being so exposed to risk.
And when we talk about the market and monitoring the market, we talk about the tariff tantrum, right? And obviously, when you are monitoring the market, keeping an eye on the political machinations of the country and the globe is obviously a massive portion of that.
Yes,
When
economics
we look
and
at,
politics.
we look at society as a whole, and we can kind of break it down into all of these subsets, right? There's politics, there's pop culture, there's maybe sports, there's music. They can go into different barrels. Are there other areas that you also, something like the Super Bowl happening, does that move markets in a sense? I mean, when an event that is that culturally important in America comes around, do you guys see that as something that will have an impact on what you do? Or is it just, it's a quick rise, a quick fall, and it doesn't have any impact on what you guys do in the
I would say it's more of the latter. It's very little impact. You're
Mhm.
looking for things that are going to create a massive change. Like when Putin invaded Ukraine, that created a massive change on different supply structures.
Right.
It's things like that. When you see something, whether prepared or not, if something occurs and it has a spillover effect that can affect a bunch of different markets, that's the stuff you're looking for.
Artificial intelligence
Yes.
certainly qualifies.
Absolutely, right.
Yeah.
Now, that's extremely important. That's what's creating a lot of efficiencies. Even though unemployment can be up, our efficiency is still up.
Yeah.
How's that possible?
Right.
If you don't have the employees, because people are becoming better at their jobs by using artificial intelligence.
Right.
So yeah, artificial intelligence is a huge factor. Not so much as like pick the right stock for it or whatever, but the concept of it, right? The concept of it is really affecting efficiencies in the workplace.
So we talk about Russia invading Ukraine, right? You know that is going to have long-term consequences for the market. The advent of AI, long-term consequences for the market. Do you have another example off the top of your head? I would love to explore like another one of those things that fits into that box.
Well, one happened in 22. I mentioned it earlier, but it's a good one. And we follow what we do is we follow the economic cycles. We break down those cycles into 6 cycles and the ups and downs of the market, right? The ups and downs of the economy. Well, when interest rates go up, we know bonds are going to go down. So that's something there that we saw in 2022. And again, our target was to lose 25 to 50% less than what the market as a whole, the S&P 500, was able to lose.
Yeah. And then, we talk about monitoring the financial and economic system. And we saw something that I found to be pretty unique, and it seems like based on some of the reaction, it is a little bit unique, and that is a revision in some of those jobs reports. Is that something you monitored? And if so, when something like that changes back so drastically, does that do you then have to reset with some of the decisions you made over the last 3-4 months?
That's interesting. It seems like the market is always ahead.
Yeah.
Right? So the market is always kind of betting on the future, it seems. So you don't so much have to go backwards because it's a now thing. Now, sometimes if it's dramatic enough, like if there was a major mistake, it might have an effect. But generally speaking, it's always betting on the next activity. And you're starting to see that change today for what it's betting on for tomorrow. That's the speculation effect.
Okay, so no matter, even if it is a quote-unquote revision, that's a revision that you are using to gauge the future.
Yeah, as long as it's not something dramatic and has a major impact.
Yeah.
And generally those mistakes are not going to be so blatant. They're not going to, there may be small errors, but not something so wild that it was just way out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotcha. And then, people who are at home and doing all of the right things, but are surveying that future. And it's difficult, especially, you keep up with the news, which everyone is supposed to do, and I think is ultimately a very beneficial thing to keep tabs on, but at times can be scary, unquestionably, with the number of different things that, must be monitored and can be chaotic and can be looming and big and scary. Is there anything that you have found that people stress or worry about with their financial portfolios way too much. That they just need to take a step back from and not personally worry about so much.
I think as people start to retire, we notice most people are not spending enough. Most people are going to die with a lot of assets that they've saved up, and because they haven't had a written financial plan that lets them know how much they're going to spend. They may have financial assets, which is like 401ks, IRAs, TSP, alphabet soup, you name it, right? Brokerage accounts, stuff like that. But they don't have an actual written plan that talks about their risk tolerance, the rate of return that they should strive for, and what type of income they can receive in those later years. Right. I think a lot of people kind of just wing it, if you will. And so they end up not in spending. So what does that translate to? It means that you're not living your life to your fullest. You only get one life.
Right.
So we love to see our clients really enjoy that, spend the money, do the things that you want to do before you can't.
And you worked so hard to get to that portion of your life. You know, you put in 40, 50 years in the workforce so that you can retire and enjoy yourself, and very well deserved. But do you find that it is more fear or lack of knowledge?
You know, that's interesting. I think it's a little bit of both.
Sure.
I think at some level, people that put in 40, 50 years of the workforce, they've saved up enough. And I think their fear is running out of money. The number one fear that statistics say with retirees is a concern is the idea of running out of money. Now, that running out of money, I'd like to add on to that without changing your lifestyle.
Right.
So the idea is to keep your lifestyle the same all throughout your life. There's that old myth that you'll, not have to worry as you get older because you'll have less bills. That's not really true.
That doesn't come to fruition.
There's 80-year-olds walking around with cell phones and cell phone bills, and
a new car is probably nice once you hit retirement. Yeah.
So that doesn't really fit in today's world. So it's the fear of running out of money, and it's the lack of knowledge of what you can do, and it's not so much a lot of knowledge you can fill in on your own. It's really hard out there, Connor, in today's world with the S&P 500, the way that it's set up, that just about, depending on how you slice it, 37% of the S&P 500 is made up about 7-8 stocks.
Right.
That makes things really difficult. That's called concentration risk. So having the knowledge of how to have less concentration risk is a really hard thing to do. Again, it goes back to what we were talking about. Find that fiduciary, find that expert to help you have a diversified portfolio.
And you want your clients to have less concentration risk, but naturally you would also like the market to have less concentration itself, right?
We'd love to, yeah, but we find ways around that.
Yeah.
So our goal is to never hold more than 5%, and that's at the absolute maximum of one particular holding. And so still trying to keep up with returns becomes a very interesting dynamic of how you study things and what you're looking for, but it is doable. And that's what the experts do, is they study this stuff to try to find the holdings that's going to allow you to still stay diversified and not have concentration risk.
You talk about that concentration. You talk about 7 or 8 companies making up 35 to 37% of the S&P 500. When you look at a solution to that, is antitrust where you go, or is there another way that you think that could potentially solve itself?
Yeah, I've been asked that before. Yeah. It's funny. In your lifetime, my lifetime, we've seen it. You grew up hearing about Blockbuster, and then you didn't even know what streaming was.
Right.
And here we are on this, right?
I used to love Blockbuster.
Right, and here we are on this right here today.
Right.
So I think technology kind of solves itself.
Right.
I think capitalism will solve itself. Eventually something will come out, that'll be better, and then we'll take it over. That's just kind of how it's always been.
Right, and just the last, 10, 15, 20 years, NVIDIA has made its way into that upper echelon.
Yeah.
So there are always risers and fallers, and I guess maybe what you would hope is that we can have multiple risers so that it's not just this place is open and a new one takes its place. Like you said, Netflix takes the place of Blockbuster. What if you could have something rise to the top without necessarily losing another one of those options?
And maybe we will have more risers now that you have AI. You might have more ideas coming to the table because they're easier to execute. So then there might be more things rising at the same time.
Right. So that diversification in our portfolios, diversification in the stock market itself would be helpful as well.
Absolutely.
Now, when you look at, if people were to ask you, you talk about AI, right? And we've talked about NVIDIA. Is there another sector of society that you see becoming or being an even stronger major player in those upper echelon stocks in the future? I would even point to maybe 15 years ago, fast casual dining became something that became
right,
very,
like
very
trends?
lucrative, right?
Mhm.
Like trends wise. And, is there anything that you see as maybe starting to breach that line? Is that the type of thing that you guys are even able to monitor, or are you just more?
Well, you're always keeping your ear to the ground,
Yeah.
right? You're always trying to hear what's going on. I
Mm.
think something to keep an eye on right now is this vaccine for cancer that's being discussed, right? That's going to get interesting, and how that would spill over. So that's one thing, right? I think technology is always something to pay attention to as AI develops, what it can and can't do, and how that leads into more efficiency into certain sectors that may have been more difficult. But if it can produce a widget more effective and at a lower cost, then that's something to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah.
And we're going to see that more and more, I think, all across different workplaces. Not necessarily high end, low end. It's just, I think, anywhere it fits, where people are looking to try to have more efficiency. I think we're going to see more of that. So I think technology as a whole, and then breaking that down, the medical side, and then the advancements of AI.
Okay, very good. And then obviously it's tax season.
Mhm.
And when this time of year comes around, do you notice any differences in terms of, for lack of a better word, vibe of clients, customers? Is there a temperament change when it comes to tax season?
Well,
Maybe more stress, more concern, or people maybe becoming slightly more aware during that month of their financial situation by default, and then that sort of leads to more questions or concerns?
Yeah, well, I think it's tax season. It's for the previous year, right?
Right.
So a lot of people get upset over nothing. It's more about what can you become aware about? What can I do now to change? A big thing that we're noticing really here locally, that people are starting to have real estate portfolios that are paid off, and they're not earning the amount per month that they should earn relative to the amount that's paid off, right? If you have $1 million paid off and you're not getting 1% a month, that's kind of not so good. So now people are like, well, I would sell it, but they don't want to sell it because of the capital gains, and they don't want to, do an exchange because they're tired of real estate. So what people are looking at, and one of the things that we're specializing in, is helping people reduce capital gains exposure through charitable means, and then providing them income that's giving them market-like returns.
When you say they're tired of real estate, can you elaborate on that? What is that feeling?
So eventually, if you have multiple pieces of real estate and they're all paid off, and you're earning money, and it's not going to be relative to the total amount that's paid off, right? Because it's a large number that's paid off, but you can only get $1,200 a month, let's say, on a $350,000 spot. So it changes up, right? The ratio is not as good the more it's paid off. Okay. In addition to that, you always have to go back. And I love real estate, so I'm not bashing this. It's just a fact. You always have to go back, beautify, and rehab and fix back up things every once in a while. And then sometimes bigger things come into play, like roofs and ACs and stuff like that. And then there's the day-to-day activity. Even if you're paying someone, eventually you just may get tired of dealing with it.
Right.
So there comes a point in people's lives where they're like, wait a minute, if I could just liquidate this and put it in the market, I don't have to worry about any of the headaches. But they don't because of the capital gains.
It's kind of stuck there a little bit.
Right. And most people's answer that they're aware of is, well, I can just exchange, right? Called a 1031 exchange. They exchange that property value into another property, but that's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
If you have charitable concerns and your heart is in that direction, there are ways that we can help eliminate the capital gains on your real estate portfolio and still get market-like returns, providing you income, which is very powerful. A lot of people are starting to take action on that because folks are now seeing the fruit of their labor and all the real estate they've had, and coming to a realization, you know what, if I could just have the cash instead, or the cash working for me better instead of the headaches, I'm at a point where I just like to do that.
Real estate, is sort of a headache-prone venture, not worth it, right? Still, like you said, you love real estate, but it can be a high-effort situation sometimes.
Oh, it definitely can. And until you hit critical mass, where you have enough that one issue is paid for by the masses, it's very difficult. And even when you hit critical mass, it just becomes a point of maybe you're just tired of it. And again, not getting the same return, right? Are you getting the right return relative to how much you have paid off? If you can put that money in the market and earn market-like returns, 7, 8, 9, 10%, well, that might be a better fit, right?
Okay, so we in your time here, we've talked about young people, new investors, all the way up to people who have paid off valuable real estate. So a wide spectrum of things to cover every time Tim Fitzwilliams is in the house. Anything else you'd like to express here before we let you go?
No, I just think it's very important not to try to be a market timer. As we see a lot of headlines, we hear a lot of things happening. It's great to research and to try to become informed, but really focus on talking to an expert who is a fiduciary that's going to put your interest ahead of their own, and get that good financial advice so that you can get a written financial plan. I can't tell you how many people have financial assets but don't have an actual written plan.
Right. And all about minimizing risk.
Absolutely.
And one way to do that is to lean on the experts in areas where knowing what you don't know is always a helpful sort of approach to a lot of things like this. Tim Fitzwilliams, we will also see you at 4 o'clock on 13 News Now.
Yes, sir.
All right, very good. Tim Fitzwilliams of Fitzwilliams Financial. He'll be back with us on our linear television station at 4 o'clock, joining us every Tuesday with valuable financial advice, expertise, and examination. We're actually going to take a quick break here. After we get back from the break, we will hear from Al Sharpton on the passing of Jesse Jackson. That's coming up next. All right, welcome back to our live Impact News studio. As you can see, I'm sort of peering to my left here because I'm actually looking at our live events board because I noticed Sharon Moore in the courtroom on one of our live feeds here. If you remember, Sharon Moore was the Michigan football coach who lost his job shortly after the college football season ended after being embroiled in a scandal involving inappropriate relations with a staff member. I just saw him appear on our board. You know, we want to get to this Al Sharpton press conference. We still have 30 minutes left in the stream. Can we very briefly listen in to this, to Sharon Moore, who is appearing in court on stalking and home invasion charges? Can we listen in on that, Sarah? Okay, we're going to listen in very briefly. Again, Sharon Moore in court, the former Michigan football coach, and then we will get to Reverend Al Sharpton's tribute to Jesse Jackson after that.
I, in fact, have a case where that was the case. In Oakland County, People versus Galloway, we had a 3-day evidentiary hearing based on the omission of relevant information that a tip came from a privileged source. And Judge McMillan at the Oakland County Circuit Court granted my motion for a Franks hearing, ultimately suppressed evidence that was appealed to the Michigan Appellate Court, and that was upheld. There's quite a bit of case law where omissions are considered Franks violations.
Okay, go ahead. Well, just one other question before you go on. In paragraph 10 of your original motion, you stated that there were, I guess, fraudulent statements that were made. And I'm trying to figure out what those may have been. Okay. Did you want a copy? I have one if you need a copy.
I'm sorry, paragraph 10.
Paragraph 10, you state that Detective Walker knowingly and intentionally or with reckless disregard presented false testimony.
Yes.
And I guess when I read these swear to, I was trying to figure out, in looking at your brief, what are you claiming that's false that she presented?
I thank you. That's a great question.
I know I asked it,
yeah.
But go ahead.
Yeah. The information that Detective Welker presented at the swear to, a large portion of it came from information she received from Heidi Sharp, the civil attorney who was representing the complainant in going to General Counsel at University of Michigan to disclose this relationship that is the basis of part of how we got here. Mm-hmm. This Heidi Sharp is when Mr. Moore came to the complainant's apartment, the first person that the complainant called was Heidi Sharp. Heidi Sharp then calls 911 and says a series of statements that are in my motion that she did not have personal information of and had no basis for and are untrue.
Okay. That may all be well and good. I understand that portion of your argument. But in paragraph 10, you're saying that the detective intentionally gave false testimony, submitted false testimony.
Right.
Now, if I'm the detective and I'm relaying what somebody told me to the court, I don't know that that's false.
I understand. So what happened was after this attorney who was not present gave this information, the actual complainant was interviewed on 3 separate occasions at her residence, which was all on the body-worn camera that I reviewed. The body-worn camera statements made by the complainant were part of the police report. Then there was a follow-up phone call with Detective Welker to the complainant. The information the complainant gave to Detective Welker conflicted with the information that Heidi Sharp gave the detective. So,
but that doesn't mean that Detective Welker presented false testimony. It just means that, which seems to me to be at the core of your argument, that there was information that was omitted.
Well, if Heidi Sharp, who is not a witness, said something that the actual witness contradicts, then it is false. Or unless you're saying that the person who wasn't present is more reliable than the person who was present. It was contradictory.
Well, I get kind of what you're saying, but you're...
Okay, I'll take it a step further.
Okay.
Heidi Sharp stated that Mr. Moore had a long history of domestic violence against Shiver. Okay. Shiver herself never made those statements. She never gave that information. There is no record of any of that. There is no documentation of any of that. There is no criminal history. There's nothing to support that statement made by Heidi Sharp. Through 3 interviews, the complainant never says any of that and also doesn't support it. She was asked by Detective Welker about assaultive behavior, and she said, no, there isn't any. Heidi Sharp's comments were completely contradicted. And Detective Welker, by submitting to the magistrate Sharp statements instead of the complainant's statements, was reckless and intentional. And false. And
all right, back here in the studio, we know the audio ended up not being great on that particular live feed, but we wanted to listen in. That was a story of enormous national interest when it broke. And of course, Michigan has since moved on with a new head coach, but Sharon Moore still dealing with some of the fallout from that situation, as we can see. Okay, let's get to Reverend Al Sharpton now with a tribute to Reverend Jesse Jackson earlier today. Of course, as we noted throughout the show, Jesse Jackson passing away today at the age of 84. The civil rights giant, the 2-time presidential candidate, the minister, Reverend Jesse Jackson, passing away this morning at the age of 84. Here's Reverend Al Sharpton speaking on this earlier today.
2:30 a.m. this morning, around about 3, I received a text from Jesse Jackson Jr. that Reverend Jesse Jackson had passed. And a couple of hours later, Reverend Jackson's son Yusuf called me and put me on speakerphone, where I had prayer with the family as they stood around his bed before taking him out to the funeral home. So it has been a very sad day for me, even though we knew he was very ill. When the moment comes, you're not prepared for it. I first met Jesse Jackson when I was 12 years old.
Okay, we sincerely apologize for interrupting that press conference. We hope to get back to it. There has just been a live feed that has come up with an update on the Capitol situation earlier, Capitol Police detaining a man who was suspected to have a firearm. Let's go live out to that update very briefly here.
And ordered to drop the weapon, which he did comply with. He laid down the weapon and then laid down on the ground and was taken into custody by our United States Capitol Police officers. I want to commend the officers for the brave service that they provided here today. Who knows what could have happened if we wouldn't had officers here standing guard like they do every single day. I think it's important to note that just a few months ago, we had an active shooter exercise right here on the West Front, virtually in the same spot. And we do those active shooter exercises every single month, and that's why we do it. I think it's also important to note that this individual had a tactical vest on. He was also had tactical gloves, and when we looked in the vehicle, he had a Kevlar helmet and a gas mask in the vehicle. He was also, like I mentioned earlier, the shotgun was loaded. He had additional rounds on his person. With that, I'll take some additional questions.
One question and then a follow-up, but first, just in reference to where we are here, can you point out exactly where the suspect was confronted by Capitol Police?
It was right, if you look over here on the west front, right up this walkway, right at the base of the steps, the first set of steps leading up to the Capitol.
And secondly, have you found anything in the car or anything else that indicates the suspect's motive?
That investigation is ongoing. We'll share that as soon as we get any information, but we haven't revealed any yet.
Does the motive appear to be to hurt the public or members of Congress?
That's ongoing.
Is there any footage of the incident or of the suspect?
There was, I know that there probably is cell phone footage that is out there because we could see in our footage that we had of the subject. So yes, we have our own footage, and there could be any public footage that's out there. I would ask the public, if you do have footage, please contact the United States Capitol Police. We would be interested in that for our investigation as well. We take the State of the Union very, very seriously, and this doesn't change our posture. We will be prepared on State of the Union night.
Chief, was this guy known to Capitol Hill Police?
He was not. He 18-year-old who does not live in the area.
Was anybody hurt during his apprehension?
No.
And of that footage that you gathered, are you planning on releasing that to the public?
That's the investigation. This is very, very early. It's ongoing, so that'll be a decision that we make with investigators and prosecutors. We know where the vehicle was registered to, which was not to him. He had multiple addresses, so we're trying to chase down where he actually came from.
All right, folks, we have time for about 3 more questions or so.
People jiggling the microphones when you first described the very first thing you said about what happened. Can you just tell us again?
Yeah, absolutely. So just afternoon today, a gentleman parked in the 100 block of Maryland Avenue in a white Mercedes SUV. He exited the vehicle. He exited the vehicle with a shotgun and began running towards the Capitol up the walkway just behind me. And as he approached the Capitol police officers observed this individual, challenged him, and ordered him to drop the weapon and get on the ground, which he did comply with. He was then taken into custody by United States Capitol Police.
A couple more questions.
All right. Just in terms of the circumstances, did the individual say anything at the time of his arrest, and also how close was he to potentially pulling the trigger?
He immediately complied from what we can see right now. I haven't been briefed on any utterances that he made during the arrest.
Just to clarify one thing, Chief, the officers who confronted the suspect, did they draw their firearms as well?
They did.
Were you able to, Jerry, might have missed much on this. Was there any kind of political motivation on this at all?
We are unaware of a motive at this time.
Okay.
Last question, Chief. About how far did the suspect travel from the parked vehicle to the point of apprehension?
If you look right over here by the Botanical Garden, about halfway down, all the way to the Capitol steps, so several hundred yards. It was.
Okay. Perfect.
Thank you all.
All right, and we're working on a news release right now, so I've talked to our threat agents to see as soon as they're good with us releasing the name and all that stuff, we'll provide that with a little bit of extra context. So, all right, thank you.
Okay, so there you have it. We took that story from beginning to end after seeing the scene earlier today, all the way through that press conference with an update. Could have been a frightening situation in Washington, D.C. All right, let's get back to Reverend Al Sharpton now with his tribute to Jesse Jackson.
And they made me the youth director at 13 years old of Operation Breadbasket under the national director, Reverend Jesse Jackson. Reverend Jackson was about 27, I was 13, and ever since then, for 69 years, we bonded. The last time he spoke in New York, he spoke at the House of Justice for us. I can't think of a time that we were not spending time together. Now, he was a hard taskmaster. He would always get on me about, why are you on this issue? You need to be more studied on this. But he was one who was more responsible than anyone for teaching me activism. On a personal level, my family and I used to spend every Christmas at the Jackson's house. And the last 2 Christmases took my daughters, one who's with us today, to Chicago. We spent Christmas night at Reverend Jackson's house just 5 weeks ago, and last Christmas. We would feed people at the House of Justice and then go to the airport in the afternoon and fly to be with him. So I will always be able to cherish that I spent his last Christmas with him and spent last days even when he could no longer speak well. What I think on a broader level is Jesse Jackson changed American politics. Jesse Jackson changed the civil rights movement. He was a consequential and transformative figure. And he changed New York politics. Let me go in that order. One, it was when Dr. King died, was killed in '68, he was talking to Jesse Jackson and Ben Branch over the rail at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis. And Reverend Jackson was literally one of the 2 last people to speak to him. I always wondered how much trauma that must have been for him to witness Reverend King's assassination. He never would talk about it too much, but it drove him. He kept saying, we got to keep Dr. King's dream alive. He was 12 years younger than King, as I was 13 years younger than him, and he would always challenge me that your generation's got to do what John Lewis and all of us that were younger than Dr. King did. He kept the movement going by keeping the economic boycotts of Operation Breadbasket going, by dealing with diversity, by fighting for affirmative action. You must remember when the late 70s and 80s, when Reaganism rose and there was this backlash on civil rights, Jesse Jackson took the front with John Lewis and others to restore what Dr. King had done. We romanticized the 60s like they were never challenged. They were challenged. We had to renew the Voting Rights Act every 5 years. We had to deal with state laws. And it was Reverend Jackson that did that into our era of having to deal with racial profiling and driving while black and all. We learned all that from him. It was in 1984, when he ran for president, that he changed the rules that primaries were governed by, where in pre-Jackson, if you ran in New York, for example, and you got 104 delegates and your opponent got 100 delegates, your opponent got all 204 delegates. It was Jesse that made it be, no, you get your 100, they get 104. With him changing it to proportional delegate representation is how Barack Obama was made the nominee. Hillary Clinton won more big states, but he was able to accumulate more delegate votes. So he literally changed the party in '84. And then in '86, the midterm elections changed because he had registered so many new voters that had not been calculated before, that many of the states turned, and the U.S. Senate '86 became Democratic control and maintained a lot of the things that we would have lost under the Reagan era because Jesse Jackson registered those voters. In '88, he ran again, got 7 million votes, won the city of New York. It was his '88 race where he won the city, lost the state to the caucus, but he won the city of New York, which made us believe in '89 we could win, and we did by electing David Dinkins. David Dinkins was his coordinator for New York City in '88 and became the mayor in '89 off Jackson votes and the belief we could win it because Jesse Jackson, despite the controversies around him, won the city of New York in '88. So I'm not talking about somebody that just is some removed figure in history. He literally changed American politics, New York politics, and kept the civil rights movement going, and then raised some of us that have been in the forefront in the first part of the 21st century to do what we do. And he's been there with us. When we did George Floyd, he was right there in the church with us when I did the eulogy. He was there with us with Trayvon Martin. He never stopped. I once said to him, "You already in history. You've gotten all the honors. Why do you keep going?" He said, "I never learned how to retire." He said, "You got to remember, Al, Dr. King was killed at 39 years old. Medgar Evers was killed at 39 years old. Malcolm X was killed at 39. We were never raised to be 40 years old." He said, "I woke up one day at 55. There's no retirement plan for us." And he kept going until this morning. So my whole life and the whole country and the world was changed. Don't forget, he went and got hostages from Iraq, hostages from Syria that no one else could get for this country. Never got the credit he was due. But he said to me that those that need the credit don't deserve it, and those that deserve the credit don't need it. Well, I'm going to make sure as long as I'm alive, he gets the credit, Reverend Jesse Jackson. On this Saturday, our regular Saturday Action Rally will be at the historic Mother Amy Zion Church. It's the church that Frederick Douglass spoke at. It's the church that Sojourner Truth at the altar changed her name from a slave name to Sojourner Truth. It's the church that Madam C.J. Walker's funeral is at, church that Paul Robeson was a member of. His brother was one of the pastors. So in Black History Month, we're going to dedicate the Action Rally this week to Jesse Jackson, which was the last organization he spoke for in the city of New York. Last time to Harlem, when he left the House of Justice, we took him to Sylvia's. And I never forget when he finished, we had to help with the fork. And he told me, "Wheel me into the kitchen." And he shook hands with all of the people in Sylvia's restaurant, shook hands with him in the kitchen. That's the last time he was here. So we're going to honor him. We're asking all of our city officials to join us there. We are the organization that Dr. Jackson worked with, and we're going to honor him this Saturday. We want all of them to come and give their condolences in a New York salute to Reverend Jesse Jackson. Any questions?
Yeah, Reverend Sharpton, what did he open your eyes to? What did he help you realize that you didn't know or weren't aware of, or how you got better?
He opened my eyes in two ways. He opened my eyes that we could make a difference, we could make change, that we could not be cynical. So by him running, as never had been an elected official, with most black elected officials at that time not with him in '84, when he ran and did that, I believed that we could make a difference, we could change laws, and which is why I went from just being bitter to trying to be better and be able to help change the system by not just fighting the system, but fighting it inside and outside at the same time. What he did for me personally, I was born and raised in Brooklyn. My father left when I was 10. Unlike many other ministers that I looked up to, I didn't come from a high pedigree, nice family with my father and grandfather and great-grandfather preachers. My father left. Jesse was born out of wedlock. He taught me, his slogan was, "I am somebody." It's not how you're born, it's where you go with it. So he made me believe even a kid on welfare in Brownsville, Brooklyn, could be somebody because of Jesse Jackson taught me that. Look what he did, born out of wedlock in Greenville, South Carolina. If he could do it, I could do it. It's easy for a preacher that's got PhD and his daddy was a big preacher and granddaddy. It's easy for him to do it. It wasn't easy for Jesse. And he taught me that it didn't have to be easy for me, but I can make it anyway.
Good morning, Reverend Sharpton. I was just looking at some of your archival video this morning. One of them that just popped up was the March in 1995. against the social service cuts against Governor Pataki. Just, what do you remember? Take us back to that day and what you remember about how powerful that bid was with Reverend Jackson.
In 1995, they had cut the budget. Pataki had just been elected in 94. And I decided we were going to do a 10-day walk from New York to Albany. And we started at the Canaan Baptist Church where Wyatt T. Walker was pastor, then Dr. King's aide, and we'd walk 1.5 miles a day. Reverend Jackson flew in and said, I'm going to start the march with y'all and finish with y'all. And I said to him, oh, you're not doing all 10 days? He said, I'm not overweight, you need to walk. So we would laugh about that. And he met us in Albany. And we marched on George Pataki and got a lot of the legislation restored. That's how much he had local impact. He worked a lot with 1199, he worked with National Action Network, but he would know, he would call me, we used to talk 6 o'clock every morning, he would call me and say, what are y'all doing about this referendum? I said, how do you know about that? But he was constantly kept his hand on the pulse on what was going on around the country.
Reverend Sharpton, can you speak to how he was a bridge between generations, of Dr. King's generation, your generation, and the generations today of the social justice movement?
I think that Jesse Jackson was a bridge that was not given credit for. He was the youngest person on Dr. King's staff, so he was attractive to people like me that was a generation behind him, because he was more hip. He used to wear a Martin Luther King medallion. That's where I got that from. And he used to wear a vest. I never saw him wear a suit and tie until about 1972. And he had a big afro. So he wasn't the style of the conservative preachers like Dr. King was. And he then was able to understand our generation of saying no justice, no peace, rather than I am somebody. And he was the bridge that would say, but let us get something done. And he would be there. So whether it was in the 70s and 80s where we were fighting around the issues of Howard Beach and Yusef Hawkins, which he came in and visited the funeral home with me at Yusef Hawkins, or then later in the 21st century, if it was Trayvon Martin, he came and stood with us. He would stand behind us as much as he would lead us, but he would stand behind us. I used to say he's leading from the back now, because he'd be there. And I think that he was never threatened by those older than him or younger than him. He just wanted us to keep our eyes on the prize.
And what about his commitment to peaceful protest and peaceful change at a time when there was a lot of violence?
He was adamant that we always keep nonviolence, because he said you're going to, first of all, he said you must have the moral standing that those we're fighting don't have. And if you become as immoral as them, not caring about life and the like, then you are not fighting a cause, you're fighting for who can have more power. So he definitely would always say that, and he would always say to me, if he heard I was getting ready to do something, Al, make sure that there is no violence. Make sure that you don't step outside of Dr. King's principles. And I think he also would always reprimand us about language, not only violence in terms of physical, but your language must communicate justice, not revenge. He was very, very hard on me.
All right, Reverend Al Sharpton paying tribute, speaking about remembering Reverend Jesse Jackson on the day in which Jesse Jackson passed away at the age of 84. Rest in peace to Jesse Jackson. Now, we only have about a minute left here on this stream. We want to give one more piece of news that broke today, courtesy of Old Dominion University Athletics, which is that athletic director Dr. Wood Seelig announced today that he'll retire as the director of athletics effective December 31st, 2026. He has been the athletic director for 16 years at ODU. That included 21 conference championships, a number of important firsts, a number of milestones for multiple major athletic programs, and helping to raise more than $157 million during his time at the university. In some ways, unprecedented athletic success in the modern era at ODU. under Dr. Wood-Selig. A fantastic career, one that will come to a close in this capacity at the end of 2026. And this show has come to a close in its capacity at the end of this hour. We hope to see everybody right back here tomorrow at 1 o'clock p.m.